Hello Internet, today we're taking a look at SLI. Back in 2015, this was the dream PC that I couldn't afford. But now it's 10 years later and I finally get to play about with it. The PC I'm using today might look familiar. It's been featured on this channel before. In my last video it had a different GPU, but we've made some changes this time around. We're now running Windows 11 and we're testing out SLI. Inside you'll find an i7 4790S, a processor that was released way back in 2013 with a 65W TDP. It's paired with a Z97 motherboard and 32GB of DDR3 RAM, running at 1600 MHz. Now let's see it in action. First up is Assassin's Creed Unity running at 1080p on high settings with FXAA enabled. Now let's look at the numbers. When running two GTX 960s, the performance really shines. We see the average frame rate soaring to 76 FPS, that's about a 50% increase. The 1% lows also get a nice upgrade, rising to 51 FPS, which is around a 30% improvement from my previous testing with one card. And then there's the 0.1% lows, which come in at 41 FPS, which is definitely a solid increase over a single GPU setup. So yeah, in 2026, SLI is delivering some real advantages, especially for a game like Assassin's Creed Unity, which came out way back in 2014. Next we're jumping into Borderlands 2 running at 1440p, and I've turned off depth of field, but I'm using TAA for anti-aliasing. Fast forward to 2026 and those old GTX 960 cards are incredibly affordable and easy to find. I picked mine up for about £50 each from eBay Marketplace. It's practically a steal compared to their original price. But that leads us to a big question: is it actually worth it? If you're feeling a bit nostalgic, it kind of makes a lot of sense, because back in 2015, running GTX 960s in SLI was a game changer for many of us. When you run two GTX 960s, you see some solid numbers. The average FPS jumps from 59 to 71, while the 1% low FPS rises to 40 FPS, giving you about a 20% overall performance boost. However, the 0.1% lows drop a bit, going down to 24 FPS. The online marketplace for CD keys and software. G2A.com, where you can find discounts on all the keys you need. Next is Deus Ex Mankind Divided at 1080p with high settings, motion blur and depth of field are disabled and using the DirectX 11 API. Using two GTX 960s for tasks like video editing in DaVinci Resolve can actually be beneficial. Some video editing tasks love having two GPUs, making rendering or applying effects much quicker. But here's the downside: not all apps or effects in Resolve take full advantage of those multiple GPUs, and SLI support can be hit or miss. Performance-wise, in Deus Ex Mankind Divided we saw a good boost of about 45% compared to using just one card, averaging 67 FPS with a 1% low of 18 FPS and a 0.1% low of just 9 FPS. I'm diving back into one of my all-time favourite games, Fallout 4, running at 1080p with motion blur off and depth of field set to bokeh. I've been a huge Fallout fan for many years. The new TV series really ignited my passion for the game. Honestly, I think it's the best video adaptation. The writers totally got the tone, atmosphere and dark humour that makes Fallout what it is. When it comes to newer titles, driver support isn't great anymore, especially since Nvidia stopped major updates for Maxwell cards like the GTX 960 back in October of 2025. Plus, you're missing out on cool features like ray tracing and DLSS, which are only available on the newer RTX cards. So, no fancy lighting or AI upscaling for us today. But honestly, it's not as bad as it sounds. With a bit of tweaking, Fallout 4 still runs pretty smoothly on this setup, averaging 118 FPS. The downside is that the 1% lows drop to 57 FPS and the 0.1% lows fall to 22 FPS, which is pretty standard for SLI. Next up is Far Cry 5, running at 1080p on high settings with motion blur turned off and SMAA enabled. As soon as I tried this game in SLI, I encountered some pretty frustrating stuttering, which really made this the worst experience yet. It's pretty clear why many gamers have shifted away from SLI and opted for newer graphics cards. One alternative is the RTX 3060 Ti. This card not only supports DLSS and ray tracing, but it also delivers excellent performance at 1080p and sometimes even 1440p. Plus you can often snag one for a few £100, which is great value in 2026. In short, if you're considering an upgrade, you really can't go wrong with the RTX 3060 Ti. In Far Cry 5, the stuttering has made this game pretty much unplayable, even with a so-called 20% performance boost. Going from 51 FPS to 63, the frame time lows are brutal. The 1% lows drop to 4 FPS and the 0.1% lows 3 FPS. So yeah, Far Cry 5 is definitely a game I'd rather play on a single card. Let's move on to Grand Theft Auto 4 running at 1080p with the FusionFix mod installed. I have the settings set to very high, FXAA is on, and I'm using the Vulkan API. FusionFix is a community mod that fixes a ton of long-standing issues in the PC version of Grand Theft Auto 4. The original game had all sorts of performance, lighting and physics problems tied to frame rates, along with stability issues. Rockstar never fully addressed these, so the community took matters into their own hands. It cleans everything up and makes the game run as it should have from the start. Performance-wise, GTA 4 averages 58 FPS, with 1% lows at 16 FPS and 0.1% lows at 13 FPS. Finally, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance running at 1080p with high settings and with motion blur turned off. Here, performance averages around 50 FPS, with the 1% lows at 26 FPS and the 0.1% lows at 19 FPS. So, after spending some time with the GTX 960 in SLI, what's the final verdict? Well, it's about what you'd expect. In the right games, mostly older titles made with SLI in mind, you can still see some impressive boosts. Gains of about 20, 30 or even 50% are pretty common for hardware over 10 years old running in SLI. But the downsides are hard to ignore: inconsistent frame time lows, stuttering, poor support for newer games, and discontinued drivers highlight why SLI is basically a relic for PC gaming. When it works, it's fun and nostalgic, but when it doesn't, it can really ruin the experience. If you enjoyed this deep dive, give it a like and subscribe for more retro PC experiments. Drop a comment below to let me know what old hardware we should test next. Thanks for watching, I'm David James, and I'll catch you in the next one.